Hello, it's Alex and welcome to Hey Little Thrifter. Today I'm going to be talking about some horror films rather than books. Last month I did my top 10 favourite horror films of all time. I will leave that video linked in the description below in case you haven't seen it and would like to check it out. And I thought I would continue that in a series of my favourites of each decade. And today's video is actually going to be kind of 1920 to 1970 because, granted, I probably haven't seen enough films from that era in order to do a dedicated top 10 per decade, so I thought I would just do that whole era in one video. That said, I did have a hard time narrowing it down to just a top 10, so I ended up doing a top 13 instead because, yeah, I just couldn't knock any of these off the list. And as usual, I haven't ranked these, so I'm just going to go in chronological order. First up, from 1920 is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, directed by Robert Wiener. This is a German silent film about a man who hypnotises a sleepwalker into committing murders. And yeah, this is just such a fantastic film, especially for that time. The visuals are stunning and it's super atmospheric and yeah, a really intriguing story. It's definitely a must-see. Next up, from 1922 is Nosferatu, directed by F.W. Murnau. This is another German silent film, this one taking on an adaptation of Dracula by Bram Stoker. I think this one is another must-see and it has some absolutely beautiful imagery and yeah, I mean, who doesn't love the Dracula story? And this particular incarnation of Dracula, Count Orlok, is, yeah, just an absolutely brilliant creation. Next, from 1931, Dracula, directed by Todd Browning. So yeah, another adaptation of the same story. This one stars Bela Lugosi as Dracula, super iconic. He is just absolutely wonderful and so striking in this role. Renfield in this film is super creepy and brilliant, and yeah, there are some changes to the story versus the original novel, but I really enjoy it. It's beautiful and atmospheric. This is definitely my favourite of the original Universal monster movies. Next, from 1932, another Todd Browning film, Freaks. This is about a group of performers in a circus freak show, and a path to revenge is set upon when they find out that this beautiful trapeze artist has some unsavoury plans for one of their group. This apparently was an absolute flop when it came out. It was really dark and disturbing and people just did not like it, and yeah, it was pretty much the end of the director's career, but over the years this has become a classic. And yeah, it's definitely one you should check out if you haven't already. Next up, also from 1932, is The Old Dark House, directed by James Whale. This is a bit of a lighter horror film. It's, I guess, a horror comedy, essentially. It's about a group of people who are travelling through Wales, and it's a dark and stormy night, and they just can't go any further because of the weather. They find this remote house and seek refuge in there, and the family that live in this house have a dark secret. Yeah, this one is just a ton of fun and it does have some good creepy moments too, so it's a really great mix, and yeah, it's one that I don't hear many people talk about. Okay, now moving on to the 50s. Apparently I didn't have any favourites from the 40s. So from 1957 we have Curse of the Demon, also known as Night of the Demon, directed by Jacques Tourneur. This is about a professor who is investigating a supposed devil worshipper. This one's great. I love how the story unfolds and it has a great climax, and yeah, especially if you're into occult horror, then I'd definitely recommend it. Next up, from 1959, is House on Haunted Hill, directed by William Castle. This is about a millionaire who invites a group of people to spend the night in this spooky house with him and his wife, and anyone who is still remaining in the morning will win a ton of money. This is another one that's at the lighter end of the horror spectrum, and yeah, it's a ton of fun, and Vincent Price is absolutely wonderful. Now we're moving into the 60s, and from 1960 we have Black Sunday, directed by Mario Bava. This is a black and white Italian film about a witch who is killed and some hundreds of years later comes back to have her revenge. This one has all the gothic style and atmosphere that you could want, and it stars the beautiful Barbara Steele. Also from 1960 is Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. I don't think I need to say anything about this, it's one of the most famous films, let alone horror films, but yeah, it's a classic for good reason. Another one from 1960 is Les Yeux Sans Visage, Eyes Without a Face, directed by Georges Franju. This is about a girl who has been disfigured in an accident, and her father, a surgeon, is determined to fix her, no matter what the cost. This is a black and white French film. It is beautiful and absolutely iconic. Yeah, this is a definite must-watch if you haven't seen it before. And another one from 1960, man, that was a good year for horror films. We have The City of the Dead, directed by John Llewellyn Moxey. This is a British black and white film. It stars Christopher Lee, and it's about a woman who is researching witchcraft, and she travels to this small town that has witchcraft in its history, and she, uncovers some strange goings on within the town. This one is a brilliant hidden gem. I don't think it's super well known, but it is definitely worth your time. Next up is Blood and Black Lace from 1964. This is another one directed by Mario Bava, who did Black Sunday. This one is generally known as one of the first Giallo films. It is set in a fashion house in Italy and a masked killer that is picking people off. Again, super stylish and atmospheric. It's absolutely brilliant. And last but not least, from 1968, Night of the Living Dead, directed by George A. Romero. Another super famous one. This is the iconic zombie film. If you're only going to watch one zombie film, then this is it. I currently live in Pittsburgh, and it was all filmed right here in Pittsburgh, so it would be remiss of me to not include it in this list. So that is my top 13 horror films pre-1970. Let me know if you've seen any of these. I would love to hear your thoughts, or please tell me what your favourites are. I would love to hear about them. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye!